There's something terrifying about silence. A person who says nothing, who just sits there watching, often unsettles us more than one who rants or shouts. That's because the silent gaze carries weight. It feels like they already know something about us, as if they're reading what we can't hide. And here's the truth. We are all caught in this game of gazes. Sometimes we are the ones being studied, and sometimes we are the ones studying. There are two kinds of gaze we encounter in life. The shallow one of judgment, where someone quickly measures us up, and the deeper one, the philosopher's gaze, that cuts through masks and sees straight into the soul. The second kind is rare, but when you feel it, you know. It's like standing in front of someone who can read your mind without a word. That's exactly what I want to discuss here. This isn't just ordinary intelligence. It's a deeper, more subtle kind of awareness that most people never develop. It has nothing to do with cheap tricks or manipulation, and everything to do with perception. So let's get into it. What you're about to hear isn't the work of one thinker, but the wisdom of many. Philosophers, psychologists, and observers of human nature across centuries. From Plato to Aristotle, philosophers wrestled with the connection between body and soul. Plato sometimes saw the body as a prison, yet he hinted that the soul leaks through in gestures and expressions. Aristotle went further, accepting physiognomy, the idea that features and movements can reveal inner character, describing a sympathetic correspondence between body and soul. Cicero echoed this when he said, "The face is a picture of the mind, with the eyes as its interpreter." Modern psychology hasn't strayed far from these ancient intuitions. Researchers note that even infants within months of birth can distinguish happy, sad, or angry faces. Our eyes, posture, and hands transmit emotions we may never voice. As psychologists explain, eye contact in particular feels dangerous to those burdened by shame or anxiety, because it risks exposing what they most want to hide. That's why someone who averts their gaze isn't simply shy. They may be shielding guilt, fear, or insecurity. Smart observers treat these signals as a kind of mirror of the soul. A clenched jaw may speak of frustration, a slouched posture of self-doubt, restless fingers of unease. If words and body language clash, seasoned readers trust the body. As one puts it, nonverbal cues form a natural, unconscious language that reveals true intentions. Every smile, squint, or nod becomes more than a surface gesture. It is a coded message pointing past the mask of manners to the character beneath. And that's the key. Our bodies often betray the truths our words try to hide. Which brings us to the next layer. If our gestures are honest, why do we spend so much energy hiding behind performances? This is where Nietzsche's idea of the mask enters, and that's exactly what I'll explore in the next chapter. Friedrich Nietzsche warned that everything profound loves the mask. What he meant is that we rarely present ourselves as we are. Instead, we craft personas to survive, to impress, or to conceal. The polite smile, the confident handshake, the rehearsed tone of certainty, these are often masks, and beneath them lies something more complicated. Nietzsche described this habit of putting up a false front as not the exception, but the rule of human life. Smart observers know this. They expect disguises and watch for the cracks. A grin that looks practiced, a laugh that comes half a second too late, or a voice that trembles under the weight of confidence. These betray the real emotions leaking through. Psychologist Paul Ekman showed that micro-expressions, those fleeting involuntary flickers across the face, often reveal anger, sadness, or contempt before the mask snaps back into place. A salesman's smile may hold for too long, but a tightening around the eyes exposes irritation. A student's nod may suggest understanding, but a flicker of doubt in the eyes tells a different story. Nietzsche wrote, "Every profound spirit needs a mask, because the truth of a person is often too fragile or too threatening to be shown directly." The wise reader of people understands this paradox, that authenticity is glimpsed not in the mask itself, but in the slips, the hesitations, and the fleeting expressions that escape despite our best efforts. Nietzsche shows us how we hide behind masks. But what happens when someone's eyes pierce through that mask? When their attention alone forces us to reveal parts of ourselves we'd rather keep hidden? This is where Sartre's idea of the gaze comes in, and that's what I'll discuss in the next chapter. Jean-Paul Sartre introduced the idea of the gaze, the unsettling shift that happens when we realize we're being watched. In that moment, we stop feeling like free subjects and begin to see ourselves as objects in someone else's world. Sartre argued that we become aware of ourselves only when confronted with the gaze of the other, because their eyes frame us, judge us, and reshape how we act. Think about it. Staring at someone feels one way, but being stared at is another story entirely. A sudden gaze can make us blush, stiffen, or rush to justify ourselves. Social psychology even confirms this through social facilitation. People often perform simple tasks better when observed, but falter on complex or new ones. The presence of others changes us. Smart observers use this in reverse. They watch not just the gaze itself, but how people respond to it. Does a usually calm friend tense up when attention turns their way, betraying hidden anxiety? Does a shy classmate straighten proudly when called on, revealing a hunger for recognition? A speaker who sees skepticism in the audience may stumble, while a confident one presses on unfazed. Sartre once dramatized this tension in No Exit with the line, "Hell is other people." For some, being seen feels like a prison. For others, it's a stage. The philosopher-reader pays close attention to these moments. Who thrives under the spotlight? Who shrinks? And who masks fear with bravado? In those fleeting shifts, flushes, twitches, pauses, the deeper truth of a person briefly emerges. Sometimes, the loudest truths echo in silence. Romanian philosopher Emil Cioran reflected on this unsettling power, writing, "We feel safer with a madman who talks than with one who cannot open his mouth." A silent presence, he suggested, can be more disturbing than endless chatter, because it conceals depths we cannot see. In conversation, it is often the pauses, the hesitations, the unsaid words that reveal the most. A person who suddenly grows quiet during an argument may be hiding guilt, wrestling with doubt, or preparing to withdraw. In a meeting, a normally talkative colleague who falls into silence may have been wounded by a subtle remark. Even the rhythm of pauses matters. A lingering hush after a question, or the weight of unspoken disagreement, can shift the entire atmosphere of a room. Smart observers pay close attention to these gaps. They know that silence is rarely empty. It can carry judgment, resentment, fear, or quiet strength. A bully who runs out of words has reached an unseen boundary. A wallflower's silence may be less passivity than keen observation, and often the person who talks the most is not confident at all, but covering their unease. Cioran believed that after all our struggles to explain and define, the only answer, the only reality, is silence. To the perceptive, these silences are not blank spaces, but messages in themselves. The shuffling of feet, a tightening jaw, or averted eyes in the midst of quiet can reveal more than any speech. The wisest readers of people don't just hear words, they listen for what isn't said. Cioran teaches us to hear the weight of silence, but even then, our own emotions can cloud what we notice. To truly read others, one must remain steady, untouched by the storm around them. This is where the Stoics step in, and that's the lens I will explore now. The final skill of a wise observer is calm detachment. The Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, taught that we cannot control others, only our own minds. As Marcus put it, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This discipline allows the observer to see clearly without being swept into drama. In practice, this means reading others without losing balance. In a heated argument, the Stoic-minded person notes who is truly angry and who is simply loud. They observe clenched fists, forced smiles, or trembling voices without letting their own emotions flare. Marcus urged himself to refrain from all anger and passion, because anger blinds judgment. By staying composed, the sharp observer notices patterns others miss, who is actually in control, who is masking insecurity, and who is quietly steering the exchange. This perspective also applies in ordinary life. A patient listener allows someone to speak fully, then discerns the subtext behind their words. When encountering arrogance or envy, Marcus reminded himself, they act this way because they cannot tell good from evil. With that mindset, the philosopher reader responds not with irritation, but with clarity, even compassion. The Stoic lens turns every room into a study of character. While others are distracted or provoked, the calm observer sees the undercurrents of insecurity, pride, or fear. The first step to reading others, the Stoics teach, is mastering yourself. Once centered, the world unfolds before you with greater honesty. So we can say that smart people who seem to read others are not mind readers or mystics. They are philosophers in disguise. They notice what most ignore, applying ancient insights to modern encounters. It has been a long time since philosophers have read men's souls, but perhaps we can revive that practice. In truth, to read others is not about judging or condemning them. It is about understanding. Every person is a philosophy in motion, a story told in gestures, glances, silences, and slips. The philosopher in the room deciphers these subtle texts with patience and compassion. They don't seek to control others, but to see them more clearly. To become that philosopher is to walk into any room and notice more. Who is hiding? Who is performing? Who is revealing truth without realizing it? When we practice this art, an ordinary gathering transforms into something deeper, a living library of souls, each face a page waiting to be read.